Hi, I'm Daniel Fisher here at Sweetwater, and today I am with Richard of Pittsburgh Modular, and he is showing us the new Cre8audio West Pest. Now, for those of you who remember, they recently released the East Beast, which brings up the question, what's the difference between East and West when we're talking about synthesis?
There's quite a bit difference between the two. They're the same form factor, but we're trying to approach synthesis in two really different ways. So in the East Beast, you have a traditional East Coast style synthesizer with your oscillator into a filter into a VCA. Mm-hmm. This approaches things wildly differently. So you do have your oscillator, the different selection of waveforms, and then they're sort of massaged a little bit differently, but then they pass through a folder. Instead of removing harmonics like you do in the East Beast, we are adding harmonics to the waveforms. And that's sort of one of the pillars of West Coast style synthesis, where you're doing additive synthesis instead of subtractive synthesis.
And when you say folder, you're not talking about something that holds paper. What do you mean?
What I mean is, as you open the folder, what you're doing is you're amplifying the waveform, but when it hits the rails, instead of just squaring out and distorting, it bends it and folds it back in on itself.
And that's going to add a whole bunch of new harmonics.
All the odd harmonics you could want. Moving then from the wave folder, which we've already created a huge sound, we move that into the dynamics controller. And what the dynamics controller, you could think of it almost like a VCA, in which it does change the volume of the sound because the oscillator, as we know, always makes sound. Mm-hmm. So we need a way to turn that off musically. In this case, we're using a dynamics controller. How it works here, though, is as you turn down the volume of the sound, you're actually removing harmonics from the waveform. And what that does is it gives you a very natural, very organic sound, whereas in the East Coast side, it's more of a cookie cutter. You're kind of turning the sound off. This sounds like it's going away from you.
Interesting. And so, like the East Beast, it is a fully complete sound-making machine that fits in a case. It's got its power supply, and again, like the East Beast, you can take these 4 screws out, put it right into a Eurorack case, and it works that way as well. And one of the things that was great about the East Beast is that you had a whole bunch of different modules that could be completely isolated from each other, used with other devices. They are completely independent of each other, so one doesn't have to control the other unless you want it to. Is that the same with the West Pest?
Oh, absolutely. It's a different set of modules, but the fundamental idea is the same. So we have our oscillator here. It's the same, actually, same oscillator core as in the East Beast, that big Pittsburgh modular core we've been working on for a long time. We have, as our core waveforms, we have a sine, a triangle, and a saw wave. Now these waveforms, we massage them a little bit differently than when we do in that. We keep them relatively clean and geometric in the East Beast, where in this one, we're always trying to hit that wave folder as hard as we can in different ways to get additional harmonics out of it, because the more harmonics you can get out of a folder, the better and the more rich it's going to sound. Okay. So we have some sauce going on in there between them. We also have analog FM as well, and a fine tune.
So now moving on from the oscillator to the waveform contour, what's going on there?
The waveform contour is a wave folder. So like I explained, you're amplifying the waveform, folding it in on itself to add additional harmonics to the waveform. Now that's fully voltage controllable as well, so you can control that with an LFO, or you can control it with an envelope, anything to get some additional movement in the sound.
Okay, and then we're moving to the dynamics controller.
And the dynamics controller really is the secret sauce of the West Pest. It's the one piece of this that really makes it unique and gives it the sound that it has. And this is based on what we would call in Eurorack land a low-pass gate. And what that means is you are, instead of using a VCA, it's more of a filter. So as you're turning off the sound, you're filtering it out. Mm-hmm. But that gives it so much life and so much sound. That's actually where the resonance comes from as well. So it's a resonant dynamics controller.
Okay, and now we're moving down. I see an LFO.
Analog LFO, extremely simple, slow, fast, and there's 2 ranges as well. So if you want it to be audio rate, you certainly can, and you can pull it back. So there's a wide range there to play with. West Coast synthesis really likes frequency modulation. So having this go into audio rate and being able to audio rate the oscillator is what you're looking for.
And the FM is normal to the LFO for a mount?
It is. So it's internally patched using the patch bay. There's a wire connecting the patches, but as soon as if you wanted to modulate it with something else, you just patch right over it.
And then glide's probably obvious.
It is obvious, yes.
And in volume, which moves us now to the patch bay. I can see the left side's in yellow, the right side's in white.
And just like the East Beast, you have your inputs on the left and your outputs on the right. And this instrument, again, like the East Beast, is fully modular. So that means you can use just the oscillator. You have control, you can patch something else. If you wanted, you could patch the East Beast in through the wave folder here. You have full patchability with that. And with the dynamics controller as well, you can patch anything in, anything out, and control it externally as well. So this becomes a fully modular set of tools.
So really, you can literally westernize your East Coast modules by running them through this.
Absolutely.
So now we've covered the analog part of this thing. Now tell me about the digital part of this.
So the digital part is a full MIDI controller built into the bottom third of this module. You have a 1-octave keyboard where you can play your notes, get your sound out of it, but it's also transmitting MIDI. It also receives MIDI as well, so you could use this to play external gear. It has a built-in arpeggiator sequencer, and I call it an arpeggiator sequencer sort of as one word because they kind of control the same, it's one pool of notes. You can easily start a sequence with the arpeggiator, flip to the sequence mode and add a rest or add an additional note that you've already played, which you can't do with a normal arpeggiator.
And you said it was 1 octave, but I'm looking at these octave buttons here, so how much farther can I take those buttons?
You do get a 5-octave range out of it, so it is very playable. And the sequencer itself, once you have a cool sequence going, there's 13 spots here, all the notes of the octave keyboard that you can save your sequence.
And when you say save, does that mean I can pull the power cord, put it back in, and they're still there?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. So it's a great way to prep for a show. You're going to have all your arpeggiations ready to go.
And obviously you can play this whole thing from itself, but we can also do MIDI as well.
Full MIDI capability, yeah. So you can control it via MIDI. It has CV and gate out in addition to ModWheel control as well. Now, the ModWheel is kind of special because this has a built-in multi-tool because you're not always using a ModWheel. If you're not using a MIDI controller, you can still take advantage of that output because it can be a second LFO.
Okay.
It can be a random source. A random source is a lot of fun in a West Coast synth. Or it can be an envelope. So you get a decay envelope with varying decay. Everything is timed off of the internal clock or the external MIDI clock. So it's always going to be in sync with what you're doing. And there's clock divisions in there as well. The digital side of this is very easy to use, but it just keeps getting deeper. It always has, I wish it did this. It's in there.
And because it has MIDI in and out, I'm hoping that means I can bring MIDI in and that will create all the control voltages based on that MIDI information.
Absolutely.
And vice versa?
Yep.
So again, we're talking about the ability to go from this to a DAW, record all of that information to MIDI, send it back, but then it's coming back out analog again.
Absolutely, and if you wanted to use that pitch and gate coming from your DAW, say with another oscillator that you've tied to this, absolutely. That's almost a module on its own.
Okay, I am ready to hear some West Pest.
I like it.
So clearly, it does not sound like East Coast. That the pluckiness, the metallic, all of the wave folding, definitely a different beast. Okay, so now I have the Arturia KeyStep Pro here, and I'm sending MIDI out, and we're going from MIDI out to the dongle to the MIDI in. I'm only going to be sending MIDI notes. I'm not going to be sending any other kind of information. Everything else is going to be coming from the sequence and all the knobs that you're turning. All right, so let me load up the sequence. Wow, it's really great to have this palette of sounds to add to all my other sounds. Again, what a phenomenal product. You've got all of these separate modules built into one, what's the width again?
40 HP.
40 HP, and you're getting 7 different devices, and each of them are independent. You've got the full sequence, you've got 13 sequences. They stay after you power off. You can transpose the sequences. It's got a full-blown arpeggiator. You can do the up and the down and the random, and obviously you can do the sequences with that, which you can also add rests to.
And it's new sounds. The circuits in here create sounds that analog hasn't made before. Like, these are special, interesting sounds. It has a life to it that no other little mono synth has had until now. And it's fun.
Yeah, I agree. So if you have any further questions about the Cre8audio products or the West Pest or any of the Pittsburgh modular products, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher. This is Richard. Thank you very much for watching.